guys, and welcome back to another insightful edition of the PURO Wrestling Academy. And I'm your co-host along for the ride, Mr. Ray Russell. And at this point in time, we're going to bring him back on. He is the professor of PURO Reisu himself. Welcome back, Mr. Dan Ginnetty.
Happy to be back, and class is in session.
You guys better be in your seats. The bell has rang, and away we go, right out of the gate. You know, Dan, every week we get more and more feedback. Everybody loving what's going on with the PURO Wrestling Academy, just kind of being educated in the start of everything. But they're all eager. They can't wait, but they're going to have to until we get to, you know, the 1970s, New Japan, All Japan, everything splitting up, and the names that everybody became familiar with, the Babas and Inokis and everybody, the trickle down from there. But they're really excited. It's like, wow, I need to know how we got there. And it's really paying off, I think. We get a lot of listeners that thought, I don't know, how it's going to be tricky to try to learn some of this early stuff, but I guess we're breaking it down well enough at this point that people are really coming along. They're really enjoying it.
I'm glad they're enjoying it. And one thing to be mindful of as we're going through the 50s, the early 50s and mid 50s, is there will be a bridge between some of the names you're reading about here and when Baba and Inoki come in. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be fighting some of these guys. It isn't like two separate worlds. Everything builds up to the next thing. And this isn't a deep dive. This is just giving you the info that's available at the time. Right. And this is really planting the seeds that will grow the mighty tree that is Japanese professional wrestling's history.
Right. If we really did a super deep dive, we'd still be back somewhere else at this point, breaking down each and every individual, what their favorite soup was, and yada, yada, yada. So we are condensing things a little bit. And another thing, I've been putting together show notes. I just finished this weekend putting together show notes for the first 3 episodes that we did. And I've already worked on show notes for this episode here too. You guys can check that out in my insanely detailed show note folder that I put over on my Patreon account. So it's fun times, guys, but it's not necessarily the notes that we're looking at, Dan, because there's a lot more here. But it's a lot of good stuff in there that people can really sink their teeth into. But man, last episode we started off 1954, and it is a loaded year in the history of Japanese professional wrestling, because we continue on this week, and I don't know that we're even going to finish 54 this week, but we're sure going to try.
So much stuff happens, and we're still dealing with that 3-headed snake. You've got Toshio Yamaguchi, Masahiko Kimura, and Rikidozan, all kind of going in different directions, but for the purposes of this first tour, they're all wrestling on this first tour together. Right. But it's not going to stay that way, and you're going to find out more later on in the show.
It's going to get good.
It's going to get crazy, and you'll look at some of the ways that wrestling is promoted in 1954 in Japan, and you go, they were doing that kind of show even back then, 70 years ago? And the answer is yes, they were. Wrestling hasn't changed as much as some people might think.
Right. Yeah, it's a never-ending cycle for sure. So we kicked things off last week, 1954, the very first televised shows from Rikidozan's promotion I'm referring to. We talked about Yamaguchi's as well. But Rikidozan, back-to-back-to-back shows, 3 shows to kick off his tour in February 1954, all drawing a sellout crowd of 13,000 fans on, I believe it was consecutive nights. Yeah, February 19th, 20th, and 21st, 13,000 fans in the same arena, 3 days in a row, all of the events to some degree shown on TV.
Yeah, the last time I can think of, or the most recent time I can think of something like that happening, is New Japan's G1 Climax. There was a time that they were booking, I believe it was Ryokoku, Kokukigen, Sumo Hall, or one of the big halls 3 nights in a row for the semifinals and the finals. So it's pretty impressive to draw that kind of crowd for such a large stadium 3 nights in a row.
Yeah, so some of the plans that we have for today's show, we're going to talk about this JWA tour. It's going to continue on past those 3 TV dates. Other house shows we're going to get into in just a moment, some of the big matches on those. But also, Toshio Yamaguchi going nowhere. He's going to strike again, opening up another promotion. We touched on it last time. He had some TV, and we're going to talk a little bit more about him. And like you speculated, or perhaps you teased is the better word for it, some interesting matches with that promotion. We're going to talk about TV coverage here in 1954. And Kimura, he's not done yet either. He's going to try to open another promotion as well. And if we can get to it today, guys, it's going to be amazing. The fight at the end of the year between Rikidozan and Masahiko Kimura. Now, if we don't get it this week, we're definitely going to touch on it next episode. But either way, you do not want to miss that.
No, that is a major, major event. And at least in Japan, I'm sure it's the first televised. Well, dare I give it away? It's only 70-year-old news. Spoiler alert, everyone. It was a shoot.
Fight, and an unplanned shoot at that.
Well, unplanned for one of the two guys.
Right.
I think the other guy got the first shot in, and at that point, things get interesting. But there's so much to talk about that particular match. In fact, believe it or not, video footage of this match exists.
Yes.
And we've both watched it. And it just raises so many questions on the how and the why. And it's even, we can talk 10 times longer than the match clip we saw last.
Absolutely. And we will, deep dive into that one specifically and talk all about it. Hopefully we get it in this week, if not for sure next episode. But in the meantime, we're going to get into all this other great stuff that takes place throughout the rest of the year, because that doesn't happen until December, the end of the year, Dan. So why don't we jump back into that first JWA tour? We talked about the first 3 nights of the tour. They were all aired on TV in some way, shape, or form. Remember, Ben and Mike Sharpe, the Sharpe Brothers, the now world-famous Sharpe Brothers at this point, the West Coast legends, they're on this tour, as well as Bobby Bruns, who's been really killing it over in Hawaii. I hear he has a little piece of the pie there. That may be why. A fellow by the name of Bob Mumphrey on this tour. A lot of rookies in Japan here. Like you pointed out off air to me, hey, there's a lot of guys on this, handful of guys on this tour from Japan. They're all starting at the same time, and that's right now.
Yeah, there's at least 6 or 7 rookies that are wrestling their first matches in front of an audience, in front of a crowd, and they're all doing it at the same time. Essentially, they're not even jockeying for position at this point. They're trying to figure out which corner to go to and what to do in the ring.
I was going to say, in many ways, this has to be an exhibition of sorts for them, because they're working against each other. How do you learn the professional wrestling business when the guy across from you knows about as much as you do, and that's diddly squat at this point?
Yeah, with the research that I've done and the research, as far as I know, you've done, from the forming of that dojo on July 30th, that very first exhibition match with Rikidozan in it, I'm guessing that his trainees were working out in the ring for several months leading up to their professional debut.
Right.
But who were they trained by, and who were they wrestling exhibitions with? Other new guys? Who's going to be the one to step in and say, do this, don't do that? In regards to reading these results, I don't think it'll be necessary to cover the undercard, because the undercard is all new guys wrestling new guys. I think it'll move and flow better if we just cover the semi-main and the main event, which usually will involve the Sharpes, Bobby Bruns, and the other 2 folks that are sporadically on these shows, Bobby Mumphrey and Jimmy Glarg or Gulak. It's a mystery, and for all intents and purposes,
just remain a mystery, Dan. I'm cool with that.
Thank you. You knew where I was headed. Let it just stay a mystery. I'm not that interested.
Right. So we covered the 19th, 20th, and 21st, all aired on TV. Like I said, at least some of the main matches on the card. So we're going to fast forward to the next show. Now, the rest of this tour, I believe there's 12 more shows, maybe something like that. These are not going to be televised. They're going to be what we know as house shows, so to speak. And we're going to continue on to February 23rd, Kamamoto, at the City Public Hall in front of 3,500 fans, a small venue. It is sold out, 3,500 fans. The semi-main, going to see Bobby Bruns go over on Kokichi Endo, 2 falls to 1 there. So Bruns, he comes over from Hawaii, and that he's going to play a big part moving forward for the next couple of years here, helping bring talent over, Al Karasik, Bobby Bruns from the Hawaii territory, and getting these guys involved in the Japanese wrestling world. And so Bruns, obviously a factor. He was part of that, if anybody recalls, a couple episodes ago, that 1951 tour. So he's one of the originals here. So Rikidozan does know him very well. He's worked in Hawaii with them, and he brings them over here. And so we see Bruns over Endo. What's interesting to me is I would consider Endo the number 4. He's not quite the rookie, but at the same time, he's underneath Rikidozan, Kimura, and Yamaguchi.
I agree with you there. Seeing Yamaguchi wrestle before Kokichi Endo was interesting to me. I don't know if this is a trust issue with Rikidozan and the other two snakeheads, but Kokichi Endo was also the guy that Rikidozan had the exhibition with, opening the dojo. So
Correct.
Maybe we can talk about the three-headed snake, but which one does Rikidozan trust more? Probably his number one guy, like probably the guy leading his dojo, which is Kokichi Endo.
Agreed. Totally.
And I think there's room, and there'll be room for the other two heads to get into semi-main events, I'm sure. But right now, we can go to the main event if you like.
Yep, that's where we're headed. Non-title matchup, tag team champions from the United States is Ben and Mike Sharpe scoring a win once again, 2-1 over Rikidozan and Kimura. First fall, it's Kimura pinfall over perhaps Mike Sharpe. So there it is, Kimura getting the pinfall match, 26 minutes into the match. The second fall, you love pointing this one out, Dan. Now I'm going to get to do it for at least one this show anyway. It's Ben Sharpe pinning, or perhaps even scoring a win with a leg lock on Kimura. So Kimura doing the job for his team, and then they come back again. And Ben Sharpe scoring another win. This time, though, Rikidozan looks like he takes the fall for the third fall. Imagine that.
Yep. So they do, between the two falls that the Sharpes got, each one of the opposing team took one of the falls. So that's nice to see. That's fair. That's even. You would think that if Rikidozan was really trying to protect himself, that third fall isn't a pin or a submission, and it's more of like a DQ, a time limit draw.
Right.
Some kind of schmoz that ends up turning into just one guy on his team taking a pin during the match. But for now, it's each one taking one fall.
Question for you. Shrewd businessman or just a coincidence here? Rikidozan does not take any losses to the Sharpe Brothers really in those tag matches on the TV show, but when they do the house show here, he doesn't mind taking a fall.
I'm glad you noticed that too. Interesting what happens when you have less than a quarter of the audience and no TV cameras. Whoever trained him well. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, let's say Bobby Bruns and the Sharpe Brothers are on tour. They kind of know how this stuff works. So maybe he did have somebody in his ear giving him a few pointers. That's a good call, too. There are a few guys lingering around that could have had some input there. Yeah,
maybe that's why Bruns gave up a pin to Endo in his match against Endo that he won 2-1.
And I do want to mention,
there's no camera.
As we go on to the next day, February 24th in Kokura, at the City Gym in front of 4,000 people. It's Toshio Yamaguchi 2 nights in a row going over in preliminary matches here. So he's still on the cards in case anybody's curious. But once again, it's Bobby Bruns over Kokichi Endo, back-to-back nights, 2-1. And once again, in the main event, the Sharpe Brothers, 2-1 over Rikidozan and Kimura. And again, it looks fairly similar. You see Rikidozan pinning Ben Sharpe pinning Kimura. And then the Sharpe's going to score the third fall on a DQ this time. Rikidozan not going to do another job, not 2 nights in a row.
It turns out he won't do a job 2 nights in a row. So now this time Kimura's the only guy taking the pin on his side. But, that's wrestling. He's in the main event, so who can complain? And again, Toshio Yamaguchi's in the second match of the show. Now, we should say this is 1954. There are 4 matches on this show.
Right.
So it's not like it's a 9-match show and Yamaguchi's buried or a curtain jerker. He's just not wrestling Bobby Bruns. And if you're not wrestling Bobby Bruns, you're not going to be in the semi-main event.
So we roll on February 26th in Osaka at the gym, 8,000 fans, double the fans here in Osaka. It looks like Kimura going to go singles here, and he's going to go to a draw with Bobby Bruns. It looks like they go to a 45-minute time limit draw after scoring 1 fall apiece. So Kimura moved out of the main event, but he can't quite score a win just yet, not over Bobby Bruns anyway, but they do go to a draw. 45 minutes, it's a respectable amount of time in there.
Yeah, and if I was asserting a dominance or a pecking order, Kimura isn't taking a pin here. He's going to a draw with a guy that's just beaten Kokichi Endo twice. So at least they're booking it in a way that makes sense because you're really dealing with 3 superstars, so to speak. And then of the non-superstars, Kokichi Endo is like the best mid-card guy. He's like your intercontinental champion level.
Exactly. That's a good way to look at him. Absolutely. Definitely the best of the mid-card for sure by leaps and bounds here. As we go to the main event, so Kimura's not in the main event this time, so Rikidozan finds himself a new partner in Toshio Yamaguchi. Let's see how they fare against the Sharpe Brothers. In fact, Dan, non-title and it's Rikidozan and Yamaguchi going over on the Sharpe Brothers. They score a win in the first fall by DQ. Then it's one of the Sharpe Brothers scoring a win in the second fall, and then third fall, once again, by pinfall. I'll call them the baby faces here, the local team of Rikidozan and Yamaguchi scoring a pinfall win over either Ben or Mike Sharpe. So Kimura couldn't get the job done, but apparently Yamaguchi can.
I'm not even Masahiko Kimura, and I'm getting a little angry.
It's pretty damn interesting to, when we look at this and see this, because I didn't really notice this until we're like talking about it now, and I'm like, wow, that's a little insulting. But hey, and finally they score a win over those pesky Sharpe Brothers. Now every night seems to be non-title, but that win there, is going to give Rikidozan at the very least apparently a title match, as I see the World Tag Team titles on the line the following night, February 27th, once again in Osaka. This one says televised. Is that correct?
I am verifying my database. It certainly is.
Wow.
In fact, this show, we'll give a little TV information here. February 27th, this was a 1-hour time slot, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., prime time, NHK TV. It was broadcast live, and it would have the semi-main, which is Toshio Yamaguchi versus Bobby Bruns. So now Yamaguchi's moved up the slot because we're on TV. And you have the Sharpe Brothers against Rikidozan and Masahiko Kimura. So you've got the top three guys, the top three native guys and the top three outsiders on this show from 8 to 9 p.m. This is action-packed. This is a major event for a wrestling television show. You couldn't book it any better. You've got all the star power in one 1-hour chunk.
Pretty damn excellent booking. You have all of the top Japanese stars going up against all of the top Gaijin stars on television. I mean, TV's still pretty new, to this Japanese wrestling world, and they kind of already have an idea of what to book and, how to make it a major event on TV. And I should mention in the preliminary, or not the preliminary, but the semi-main, it is Yamaguchi and Bobby Bruns going to it looks like Bruns gets injured in the third fall. They were tied at 1 fall apiece, and then the match is, I guess, some sort of forfeiture there. You would think Yamaguchi would go over, but apparently the match just halted. Yamaguchi and Bruns going to go to a tie.
Yeah, I guess they call it a no contest. And it doesn't have the time. They went 15 minutes, 25 seconds in the prior 2 falls. That third fall, we don't know how long it went. But at some point, Bruns is, quote, injured, and the match is stopped, and it's considered a no contest. So that's great for Yamaguchi if he was part of the injuring, and that's a good way to put him over on TV.
Yeah,
at the very least, he didn't take a pin. So that's good, too, for Yamaguchi.
So it's been non-title here in these World Tag Team title matches for the last few episodes, but being on TV, you got to sell it, Dan. So we get, World Tag Team title match right here on TV. Ben and Mike Sharpe, once again, defending against Rikidozan and Kimura. And the first fall, going to see Kimura take the loss on TV once more to Mike Sharpe here. The first fall goes about 33 minutes. Then the second fall going to go all the way to the 1-hour time limit. So they go to a draw with the Sharpe Brothers scoring the only win here in this one.
That's correct. Another match where Kimura is taking the pin. Now, I'm no math major, Ray, but let's look at this.
Okay.
It's a 1-hour time slot.
Right.
It goes live. Let's say that Yamaguchi and Bruns, the bell is ringing as the show goes on the air, plus or minus a couple
I already
minutes.
see where you're going with this. In fact, when you mentioned it was an hour, I was already questioning that. So go ahead.
Yeah. So you're looking at probably less than 20 minutes for the first match to get where Bruns gets injured.
Yeah.
And then you roll into the main event, and you have just enough time to watch Kimura get pinned on television. And then the show goes off the air.
Right. So even though it continued for the people in the arena for another half an hour, if you're watching on television, the match is over. Kimura did the job, and off air we go. So yeah, it's pretty telling, man. And sadly, nothing ever seems to go Kimura's way, at least for 1954. In the long run, he has a hell of a life. But here in the wrestling world in the early to mid 50s, man, Kimura just not catching a fair break. We'll have to wait and see how it turns out for him by the end of the year. But yeah, that's insane, man.
It's funny to watch this play out, and I can only imagine what he's thinking if all the fans and people watching at home said, yeah, I saw you got beat in that match. It's like, well, we actually did a draw. I said, well, we didn't see it. And he's like, oh, crap. So all the fans know is that I'm the guy who got beat again.
Right.
Oh, it's too funny. It's just funny to me. It's sad, but it's funny. It's just how wrestling is. It's booking, I guess.
Yeah, it's something. That's for sure. I just laugh because I know what's coming later, Dan. We move on to the following day. 6-man tag team action in Kobe on February 28th in front of 6,000 fans sees the entire three-headed snake all in one ring at the same time. It's Rikidozan, Kimura, and Yamaguchi teaming up and scoring a win, 2 falls to 1 over the World Tag Team Champion Sharpe Brothers and Bobby Bruns. So a loaded main event. All the big stars in the main event here. So it looks like Ben Sharpe over Kimura in the first fall. Kimura over Mike Sharpe on a DQ. Can't get a win in the second fall. And then Rikidozan comes in to save the day and score the win over Bruns in the third fall there.
Oh my goodness, that's funny. It almost reminds me of those dark matches after Nitro goes off the air, and all of the major guys are going to have a match, and you just don't get to see it on TV. Mm-hmm. To have all of these names on one match, and even the semi-main was Kokichi Endo against Bobby Mumphrey. So the fourth guy,
the number 4 guy, and the number 4
against
guy,
the number 4 gaijin.
Right, yeah.
So 6,000 fans got to see. I think that's quite a show. In fact, am I getting it wrong, or did Kokichi Endo wrestle the first match of that show as well?
That's what I'm getting in the results anyway. I don't know if that's a typo or what the deal is there, but that's what it says.
Yeah, the second match wasn't that long. It looks like it ran less than 20 minutes against Mumphrey. So a 5-minute, 47-second match against Akira Nagasawa probably wouldn't have been that heavy of a lift for Kokichi Endo at that point.
Yeah, but that 6-man tag going somewhere around 42 minutes, they certainly got their money's worth, I'd say.
Agreed. That's star-studded main event. That's a great, easy thing to promote, I would think, in Kobe.
And so for the next few cards anyway, we're going to see Yamaguchi pushed back down to the preliminary matches. He's always going over. He's scoring the win over these rookies, obviously, but he's not in the main event or even semi-main scene here, at least for the next few days. We're in March 1st. We're in the month of March now. 5,000 fans to, how do you pronounce that, Dan? Gifu?
I always thought it was Gifu.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry, guys, we apologize. That's look at this. Rikidozan is not in the main. Okay, we'll call it a double main event here. It's Rikidozan going 2 straight falls over Bobby Bruns, and I guess really in the semi-main position, scores the first win and obviously the second win. I can't tell. There's no note there if it's pinfall, submission, whatnot. So I'm not really sure how he scores these falls, but 2 straight falls for Rikidozan.
Now that's a little bit better than Kimura did. Kimura got the 45-minute draw against Bruns.
Right. So did Yamaguchi. Yamaguchi did a draw too. Yeah.
So he takes him out in 2 straight falls. So again, Rikidozan's the top dog. But the interesting match here, I think, is the main event. Ben Sharpe and Mike Sharpe winning 2 straight falls against Masahiko Kimura and Kokichi Endo. Mm-hmm. And in this match, the interesting thing to me is that Endo takes both falls. So
we know where the line is, right? It's like, I'm not doing the job.
So anyone here think that there was a discussion that was had at the end of the main event on February 28th before the show on March 1st? Because I certainly do. And he's like, fine, I won't be in the match. I'll wrestle Bruns. You can have a match with the Sharpes. I'll give you Endo and I'll give you both falls so you don't have to take a fall. And that might have been a maneuver to placate Masahiko Kimura, who could not have been happy with the perception that fans who are watching on TV are getting of him, because he's not showing up as being important in the televised ones. Right. He takes the only pin on the first televised show on the 19th. He goes to a draw on the second TV show, and then on the third TV show, he's the only guy who takes a pin on the team of Rikidozan and Kimura. So all the fans on TV know is Kimura's the guy who gets pinned. And that's got to get old after a while.
Oh, it's got to, especially when they're expecting it at this point. I mean, or at least fairly soon if they continue with the same booking. We'll move on to Nagoya on March the 2nd. Over 10,000 fans in attendance. Yamaguchi continues to work and win the preliminary bouts. Then from there, semi-main, it's Kimura going 2 falls to 1 over Kokichi Endo. I'll teach you to do those jobs against the Sharpe Brothers Endo. It's Kimura over Endo, Endo over Kimura, leading to that third fall, pinfall, in just 3 minutes and 49 seconds of that final fall. Kimura scoring the win over Kokichi Endo. So Again, the pecking order, obvious from the tag match, Endo taking both falls, and here, just to make sure it's definitive, even though it's 2 falls to 1, it's still Kimura going over on Endo.
Exactly, establishing himself as one of the top 3 guys for sure, and solidifying that position. And Yamaguchi, more than happy to be second match of the show, and he faces Mitsuo Surugaumi, who we'll talk more about later. But Yamaguchi seems to be happy with where he's at. Kimura is the one who seems to bounce around on this card a little bit more, and I'm sure there's a reason for it.
Right. So main event, Rikidozan teaming with Bobby Bruns. First time we've seen them on the same team here on this tour, usually against each other in some way, shape, or form. He just beat him 2 falls to 0 last house show, but here in Nagoya, it's Rikidozan teaming with Bruns. They're going to take on those evil Sharpe Brothers here. I don't know that they were evil, but I'm just guessing here. As looks like Mike Sharpe scoring a win over Bruns, not Rikidozan in the first fall. Second fall, it's Rikidozan pinning Ben Sharpe, and then tied at 1 fall apiece going into a 60-minute time limit draw against those World Tag Team Champions. Rikidozan, he's had a few partners, just can't seem to... Well, he got that win with Yamaguchi, of course, non-title.
Yep, at least the Kimura can't be too upset, because now Bruns, the guy who trained Rikidozan, can't even avoid taking a pin in a tag match that he's involved with Rikidozan.
We continue on March the 3rd. Yes, March the 3rd in Shizuoka. City Public Hall, 3,000 fans, sold out, small arena. It's Kimura and Yamaguchi, both working preliminary matches, both scoring relatively easy wins. Well, at least, no, wait, both matches go about 20 minutes. So it takes a little time, but they get the job done, both guys going over. And then we go into the main event. Once again, Sharpe Brothers taking on Rikidozan and Bobby Bruns. This time the Sharpes are going to go over 2 falls to 1. Rikidozan scoring a pinfall for his team. Mike Sharpe beating Bobby Bruns, count out of the ring for the second fall. And then it looks like the Sharpes go over in the third fall. I'm not sure what UTC, that's what I have in my note here. I'm not sure what that stands for.
I have the same thing, and a lightning bolt just hit me. I think I know what this means.
Okay.
Unable to continue.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that hit you. I don't know. It took me forever to come up with that. So
just now, it was weird how it just hit me, because I'm looking at it going, what the heck's UTC? And I thought, well, maybe it's just another way of saying no contest. Got too crazy. There's a million ways you could come up with the phrase unable to continue. And again, Bruns is taking the fall for the Rikidozan team.
All right, guys, don't kill me if I butcher some of the names of these cities in Japan, because we got a doozy coming up next, Dan. March the 4th in Utsunomiya at the Sports Center. Sold out crowd. I don't have a number here, but again, sold out seems like everywhere they go. Kimura on the undercard once more, scoring a win. Bobby Bruns, 2 falls to 0 over Kokichi Endo in the semi-main. And the main event, going to see Rikidozan back with Yamaguchi, tying the Sharpe Brothers 1 fall apiece. The final fall, a double disqualification between Rikidozan and Ben Sharpe. So Yamaguchi back in there, and at least they're not doing the job.
That is true, and Yamaguchi is taking the fall for his side, which is no surprise. And Rikidozan's side wins with a double DQ against Ben for the final fall. So it's a double DQ, which means it's no contest, or there is no result. It's a tie match or a draw, for lack of a better word, 1 fall apiece.
Looks like we're back on TV the following day, and I can pronounce Tokyo here on March the 6th. Yamaguchi with a win off TV, I'd have to presume here. It looks like a preliminary match for him, but another win. And then it's, I'm assuming these 2 main event matches may have made television. I'm not sure if you have information on that or not.
Yeah, it's only a 1 hour time slot on Nippon Television. Radio Tokyo would also cover it, and maybe just air the audio of it from 11:10 p.m. to, at some point, it lists the Kokichi Endo versus Bobby Bruns and the main event tag matches being on this show, broadcast live. But I got to think you're picking up the Endo
match
Bruns
in progress
match towards the end of it.
Right, yeah. That would make sense, especially if we'll talk about what happens here, and then maybe people can understand where we're getting at. So it is Endo going against Bruns in the semi-main event here. They're going to go 1 fall apiece and then to a 45-minute time limit draw. So Endo holding his own with Bobby Bruns. Bobby Bruns, I don't know if he's falling down the card here, but they're certainly building Endo up just a little bit with that going to a draw with Bobby.
Yep, that is true, because he's getting a draw on TV, and that's the first thing these fans are getting to see. They're going to get to see Endo go to a draw with a major star or major gaijin star, at least in the eyes of the Japanese fans in 1954.
And so since you have the great information that tells you which matches aired on television, we have to presume some form of that match aired on TV, at least, a good chunk of it. And so that would mean that it's likely again here in the main event, if you see where I'm going.
No, I know.
It's the Sharpe Brothers taking on Rikidozan and his favorite tag team partner, Kimura. And 33 minutes into the matchup, it is one of the Sharpe Brothers pinning Kimura. And you have to imagine, once again, on TV, that is where the show goes off the air.
Yeah, there isn't enough time to show the entire 61-minute draw, so they're never going to get to see that with the 1-hour time slot. They probably got the last 15 minutes, if you're being kind, or maybe just the final fall of Endo Bruns, which the final fall runs 24 minutes.
Right. And
then the first fall for the other one is Ben or Mike pinning Kimura. So what's the last thing all of these television watchers are seeing? Kimura is the guy who takes the pin.
Every time there's TV, it's almost the same identical match in regards to the stars in the ring for the main event. And every time we see this Kimura guy do the job. And, of course, TV goes off the air, and the match continues another 30 minutes, roughly. And they do, it's basically a draw, but I guess the Sharpe Brothers would technically go over 1 fall to 0 here. But it was Kimura taking the fall there once again on TV. Just amazing how that happens.
Yeah, now this makes me wonder, of the other two heads of this snake, which one was Rikidozan more worried about? Because he seems to be burying Kimura and either not featuring at all Yamaguchi, or when he does, he goes to a draw with somebody or doesn't look bad. So maybe Rikidozan was more worried about Kimura getting over than he was Yamaguchi. It's left to speculation, but looking at the booking and looking at what they do to poor Kimura, where it's just enough time on the TV show to watch him get pinned time after time, that ain't good. I can see Kimura being very upset with that.
And it certainly makes him the number 2 at the very least. He's not better than Rikidozan, who doesn't take any pinfalls on television. Rikidozan lovers out there right now are giving us grief, but I'm used to that, Dan. I get it with Dusty in Florida and Jerry Lawler in Memphis. I love these guys, but we got to tell the facts here, right? So we got to have a little fun with them and tease them a little bit, about some of their booking and their the way they're protected here in the wrestling world. I mean, you don't get that way by accident, guys, but I'm not saying Rikidozan wasn't full of talent and wasn't, a great wrestling superstar or anything like that, but it's just kind of funny to see how things were done.
Yeah. And this is a JWA tour. This isn't an All Japan Wrestling Association tour. And at this point, Masahiko Kimura doesn't even have his own promotion to promote him. Yeah. So Rikidozan's in charge. He's got the money backing for this whole thing. He's got the sponsor. So it's his gig. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to present Masahiko Kimura the way he was presented here.
Right.
But it still means Rikidozan's the top dog.
Got to make it clear who number 1 is. That's basically where we're at here.
Well, he sure did that.
We roll on. Couple more shows here in this tour. March the 7th, Yokohama, for 5,000 fans. Kimura on the undercard going over. Semi-main, going to see Bobby Bruns. I think this may be Yamaguchi's first loss, if I'm not mistaken, on this entire tour. I could be wrong, but it's Bruns over Yamaguchi, 2 falls to 1 here in the semi-main.
Yeah, that might be his only singles match loss, is one of the last matches of the tour. Interesting.
And then we have our main event, non-title, World Tag Team Champions Sharpe Brothers, scoring the win over Rikidozan, and Kokichi Endo working the main event here with Rikidozan. I think that's the first time we've seen Endo with Ricky here on this tour. I could be wrong, but unless they work TV together. It is the Sharpe Brothers scoring a victory, 2 falls to 1. It's Rikidozan scoring the only win for his team. Do you want to guess who did the job in the other 2 falls, Dan?
Yeah, Endo takes both pins and seems quite okay with that. I'm sure Kimura's would rather take the 8-minute, 49-second pin over Bob Mumphrey than to be in yet another tag match with Rikidozan against Mike and Ben Sharpe and be the only guy taking a pin.
So this is interesting. We close out the tour March the 9th, Tokyo, Japan, 13,000 fans, just like they drew for those first 3 TVs. Easily tied the biggest drawing card since the first 3 days of the tour. And Kimura's working the undercard, scoring a win over Bob Mumphrey. And what's interesting here is Oki Shikina comes in to close the tour, which is kind of interesting. Oki Shikina, for those who don't know, now there's been more than one, so don't get him confused with the guys who did the gimmick later on. This is the original I'm talking about. Born back in 1904, debuted in wrestling in 1932, one of the original martial arts gimmicks of professional wrestling. Worked a ton on the West Coast, a ton in Hawaii. In fact, by this point, the last few years, he's only been in Hawaii. He's kind of slowing down. Born in 1904, so he's 50 years old here. And last record I could find of him in the ring is in 1955 in Honolulu. So he's clearly near the end. And they call this an exhibition match with a 10-minute time limit. Oki Shikina over at Kokichi Endo. Endo going to do the job. So is this Rikidozan saying, I'd rather put my buddy Endo in this match, or is this Kimura saying, I'm not going to job to this guy? What do you think?
I think, if anything, this is probably just Oki Shikina being known as a pro wrestler and kind of bringing back a legend to show up and wrestle on the card to probably pop a house. That's how I view this. I'm not sure if there's a lot of politics involved here, but also Kokichi Endo is Rikidozan's guy. So he's like, hey, Kokichi, can you just go through a thing with Shikina? He's a big deal. He was here before any of us were. So this is kind of like a send-off to him because he's in his 50s. So let's just feature him on one of our big shows now in front of 13,000 people in Japan. And the old-timers are going to get a kick out of it. For 5 minutes of work, there's a worse way to make a living than that.
Right. He'll come in the ring, a little bit of showboating, chop, kick, and just do the job, and I'll pay you at the end of the night. And Kokichi Endo doesn't seem to have a problem with that. You know, he certainly knows his place on the card right now. So, and obviously there's some sort of friendship there between him and Rikidozan, and I'm sure that'll be prominent moving forward as well. We'll see how long that lasts. But right now we're going to go to the final match, the main event of the final night of the tour, March the 9th, Tokyo, Japan. It is once again Rikidozan, this time teaming with Bobby Bruns to take on the Sharpe Brothers the final night. Non-title, unfortunately, on the last night of the tour. That sucks. Looks like it's going to be tied at one fall apiece, going to another hour-long draw.
Yep, Ben pins Bruns. Again, the Rikidozan doesn't take one, but Rikidozan would take a pin or give a pin to Ben later on in the match, and then the third fall goes to a 61-minute time limit draw. It was non-title, which doesn't really make sense to me because it's the last show of the tour, so why not give it that drama like, oh, is this the match where they actually beat them? But instead of adding any drama to it, it's just a send-off for only 13,000 people. They already bought tickets. I guess you don't need to do anything more than that.
Right, and I'm sure a lot of people are going, are you guys going to cover every single result for every single show moving forward? And basically the gist of it is we're still getting going here. We're still explaining to you guys where the pecking order lies and who some of these guys are and what they were doing. First it was in the States, and now it's in Japan. And obviously we left out a lot of the preliminary matches here. But as we go on, no, it might not be necessary to cover every single result of every single match on every single tour. No. But I think it's very important here early on to give you guys an idea of, again, I've been asked the question repeatedly, why were the Sharpe Brothers so over in Japan? Well, this is why. They were unbeatable. They came over from the States, and it was very hard to score a win over the Ben and Mike Sharpe. And you can see here on TV, Kimura at least having his ass handed to him time and time again.
Yeah, they were put over on TV by Rikidozan and the JWA, and they were already over before with their tour from the other time that they came by. So they were already well-known guys, and they got put over strong on all the TV shows they had of this tour. So that's why they're popular, because they were world beaters. They beat the heck out of Kimura often enough.
And we're going to see, some of these preliminary guys continue on, see if they ever, make it in the business or not. Guys like Toki, Nagasawa, Kiyomagawa, Surugaumi. We talked about a few of those guys last week on the show. I'm sure people remember. So we're going to see how they fare as there's going to be a second tour upcoming here. We'll see who's still here. Maybe all of them, for all I can remember right now off the top of my head. But before we do that, I thought this would be a good time to talk about Yamaguchi's new promotion.
Sure. If you want to do that, or we can go to a brief rundown of the performance of the undercard guys on the tour.
Yeah, if you think you have enough information that, people would really enjoy it, go for it.
Yeah, I'm just going to go through this relatively quickly. We're talking about these guys. They all trained at the same time. They're all getting into the ring at the same time. You're really talking about 6 rookies. And the first one I'll talk about is Umeyuki Kiyomigawa. For this tour, he had a record of 5 wins, 6 losses, and 3 draws. And his wins are against... All his wins are against Nagasawa now that I look at it, because they're starting at the same point. So at least between Kiyomigawa and Nagasawa, it looks like Kiyomigawa's got the edge. Another guy that started, and his name is Terufusa Toki. He would only wrestle 7 shows on this tour, so I don't know if he determined that it wasn't working out for him or if he might have gotten injured. I don't have that information, but he would have a record of 2-4-1, 2 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw. And his 2 wins were against Kiyomigawa and Jimmy Glarg. So that fifth gaijin, Jimmy Glarg, who might have been from the U.S. military, we don't really know. Toki somehow gets a win over him and a win over Kiyomigawa. So his losses are to Surugaumi, Nagasawa, and a draw against Kiyomigawa. Surugaumi, his record for this tour was 7 wins, 5 losses, and 2 draws. So this guy's actually got a winning record.
Yeah, and Surugaumi, you talked about him last episode. He was a sumo wrestler turned pro wrestler, and he becomes the first ever Japanese junior heavyweight champion. So there's some success ahead for Surugaumi. Correct.
They looked at him and they liked him, and they're going to try to do something with him. And this shows in his tour results, where with his 7 wins, he's beating Toki, we just talked about, Bob Mumphrey, who is the number 4 gaijin, or number 5.
Right. Somewhere 4. Yeah, I think you're right.
He beats Togi, he beats Nagasawa, he beats Endo. He gets a win over Endo.
Wow. Okay, so there's definitely some plans there. They kind of like what they're seeing with him, it sounds like.
That's right. Now, this guy Nagasawa, that's a guy, Akira Nagasawa, I'm not sure they have high hopes for. His record for this tour is 3 wins, 10 losses, and 1 draw.
Which is kind of interesting, because I think that was the guy you were talking about last episode, who was kind of like what we dubbed the Bob Roop of the promotion. They kind of sent him out there to deal with the people and the crowd and whatnot, kind of a troubleshooter, so to speak.
Yeah, maybe it's that he's the legit tough guy, and maybe he's just, what would they say when a guy was just too rough and too tight, like a crowbar, where you couldn't get him to loosen up and work? Maybe he was just too much of a shoot guy, where he wasn't willing to let his guard down.
Right.
But he only gets his 3 wins. 2 of them are against Toki, and 1 of them is against Bob Mumphrey. Okay. He loses to everybody else. 3-10-1 is not a great way to start your first tour.
Definitely not.
Kokichi Endo has a slightly better run now. Don't forget, Endo is wrestling some of the high-profile gaijins, so his record of 7 wins and 8 losses isn't as bad as the undercard guys, because his losses are against Bruns, against Kimura, which is no big shock, and a couple tag match losses. But he does get wins against Kiyomigawa, Surugaumi, Nagasawa. He wins against Bruns. He gets wins against all the undercard guys. So Kokichi Endo's record of 7 and 8 might be deceiving until you see who he's actually beating.
Yeah, and he worked a couple of main events, He's no slouch compared to some of these other guys that he's getting to work against. I mean, he's working some of the upper tier players.
Now, this is where it gets interesting. The last 3 guys, the 3-headed snake, Yamaguchi's record for the tour we just talked about, 9 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw. And he beats everybody. He's on the team when Rikidozan gets a win over the Sharpe Brothers.
Right.
That might have been the unable to continue match. He takes a draw with Rikidozan against the Sharpe Brothers, which isn't bad. He does take a loss to Bobby Bruns, and he does lose in a singles match against Mike Sharpe, but he beats everybody else. Surugaumi, Kiyomigawa, Bruns, Nagasawa. He beats everybody. 9-3-1 for a record of a guy that looked like he was in the undercard or the second match of the show. He does very well for himself. Masahiko Kimura does not fare as well. His record is 6 wins, 6 losses, and 3 draws. And his wins are in that 6-man match with Rikidozan and Yamaguchi versus the Sharpes and Bruns.
Right.
He does get wins over Bobby Mumphrey, the lesser of, he's the fourth guy amongst the Gaijin, and he's the only Gaijin he can beat. And he beats Kokichi Endo, Kiyomigawa, and Surugaumi, and that's it. Everything else, he's just taking losses or draws being in these tag matches. So that, it does not look like an auspicious beginning for Masahiko Kimura, 6-3 record.
Let me guess how many times Rikidozan lost in your records. Actually, I'll let you tell the people. I'm curious.
His record was 6 wins, 2 losses, and 7 draws.
Wow. Okay.
So he does take a loss in one of the tag matches against the Sharpes with Kimura, and he takes a loss in the one with him as his tag team partner is Endo. Ton of draws, but he also gets wins. His singles wins are against Ben Sharpe, which is great to see, and Bobby Bruns. He does not have any other singles matches. So it's a lot of draws with the Sharpes and a couple losses with the Sharpes.
And let's point out he was not the one doing the job in those losses either.
Doing the job. He didn't take 1 pin, much less 2.
Yeah.
So his record makes sense because he's wrestling the Sharpes, and the Sharpes aren't giving up the title. So
right.
7 draws is what makes sense. But what really stands out to me is Masahiko Kimura with a 6-3 record. That is not impressive when you consider Yamaguchi went 9-3-1, at least in my mind.
Right, but you got to remember Yamaguchi was in a lot of preliminary matches. Like they didn't have room for him in the main event on those shows, so they would just kind of fill him in wherever. But I'm not, saying that that's a reason to discredit him or anything like that. Though that's a lot of wins. Period. I don't know that anybody else got 9 wins on that tour.
The only thing I would say is that Yamaguchi got one of the wins with Rikidozan against the Sharpe Brothers when with Kimura and all of those matches with him and Rikidozan versus the Sharpe Brothers, he never once got a win being on the winning side of that match. Never once.
Yeah.
But Toshio Yamaguchi did, so go figure.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the PURO Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnetty. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron. I'm talking about that $5 all access tier over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts for just $5, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Wrestling, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. We also offer remastered versions of the earliest episodes of The Grenade Show covering the 1989 NWA project. Includes enhanced sound quality, plus new content and conversation never heard before. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive Watch Along series covering many past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, Videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. And for those who like all of their podcasts in one nice, neat little pile, the WrestleCopia Patreon also offers a Patreon exclusive Spotify account. You can actually go over to your Spotify with your WrestleCopia Patreon credentials. Instead of listening or downloading directly from Patreon, you can go over to Spotify, listen to all the latest shows, including all of the early releases. And you get all of that and so much more for just $5. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come. Well, speaking of Mr. Yamaguchi here, he's going to open up his next pro wrestling attempt here at a promotion, I should say, in March. So right after this tour, Yamaguchi's going to start his next venture into what they call the original All Japan Pro Wrestling Alliance.
Yeah, it's either called the Alliance or the All Japan Pro Wrestling Association. Either way, it's not the All Japan you're probably thinking of.
Right.
He would have a tour with how many dates here? 1, 2, 3.
Looks like 12
4,
shows I have in
5.
my notes.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, 12 shows, so April 14th to May 4th is what I got here.
Yep. And it appears that I only have main event data for this, so we'll just be talking about the Yamaguchi matches for the tour.
Yeah, and in fact, a lot of the opponents aren't really well-known human beings, at least to my recollection. So
no, they're not.
If you'd like to just kind of skim over it instead of breaking it down in detail, you're welcome to do that too.
Yeah, there's nothing to break down. This promotion, the All Japan Pro Wrestling Alliance or Association, was completely dependent on American servicemen for opponents, like people who are boxers or wrestlers, to just show up in the ring and play pretend for Toshio Yamaguchi. I don't have any results of attendance for any of these shows, but it was Yamaguchi who did get on TV first, trying to run his own tour when Rikidozan's JWA was between tours. So we'll roll into Wednesday, April 14th, 1954, Osaka City in the Osaka Prefectural Gymnasium. Toshio Yamaguchi would win against Frank Glenn 2 straight falls. On the next day, Thursday the 15th, again in Osaka Prefectural Gym, Toshio Yamaguchi would wrestle Bulldog Butcher. And it says that it's a 1-to-1 result, but I have... it's both men out. I see
double count out. Looks like for the third fall.
Correct. On Friday the 16th, again, Osaka Prefectural Gymnasium. This is a tag match. It's going to have Toshio Yamaguchi and Masahiko Kimura against Butcher and Strangler Olsen. The Strangler Olsen.
Not to be confused with the Strangler Lewis or any of those.
No.
Guys. This is Strangler Olsen. This is the original right here.
I have a Ed the Strangler Lewis autograph.
Do you really? Wow.
I do. It was I got it off of eBay a million years ago before anyone cared about wrestling stuff. And I was just looking at it in my basement today. Wow. I have no idea of its value, but I'm not interested in getting rid of it anyway.
Well, I got you beat. I have an Evan the Straight. No, I'm just kidding, man. I'm just messing around.
Do you have one of those Bruno San Martino guys?
Gotta talk to Jack Pfeffer, see what I can come up with there.
All right, so for this tag match, Kimura pins Butcher. Butcher pins Kimura in the second fall. Yamaguchi comes in and gets the both team count out of ring. Schmaz finish in 1954, everybody.
Right.
1 fall to 1. But at least Kimura gets the first pin. In return, he does get pinned for the second fall. So Kimura is trying to get over here.
No matter where Kimura goes, there's somebody else booking, there's somebody else promoting, so he's screwed in regards to doing the job.
So what should it tell Kimura? You got to run your own show if you want to improve your standing.
I'm sure we'll get there before today's over.
Yeah, April 18th, 1954. We're finally getting out of Osaka. We're in the Tokushima Prefecture and the Tokushima City, just in Tokushima City Hall. And this is another tag match. Yamaguchi and Kimura against Bulldog Butcher and Tommy Jennings. Yamaguchi gets a pin over Jennings. Butcher gets a DQ on Yamaguchi. And then Kimura comes up with the pin over Jennings for the win.
How about that?
So
not used
finally
to
see Kimura actually takes a fall, gets a pin on somebody to win a match. It's mark it here first. What's the date? April 18th, 1954.
It's interesting. Well, we go to the next night or the next show here on April 20th.
Yeah, April 20th, another Kimura Yamaguchi show. Butcher and Tommy Jennings again. Yamaguchi beating Jennings first fall. Jennings beating Yamaguchi the second fall. Kimura with a body lock on Butcher for the final.
So I think it's safe to say, even with just this little bit to work with here, that Yamaguchi is more giving than Rikidozan here, because Yamaguchi's not only taking falls, but he's also letting Kimura, score the win for the team. So a little more giving is Yamaguchi.
Yeah, much more agreeable person, perhaps.
Yeah, clearly.
Let's see how Wednesday, April 21st does. This time they're in the Nagoya City Gymnasium. Another 61-minute match. It's another tag match. Butcher and Olsen defeat the team of Yamaguchi and Kimura. Butcher gets a fall on Kimura. Kimura gets a fall on Olsen, but Butcher gets another fall on Kimura. So DQ, we're right back.
It's a DQ. I'll take this after a couple of big wins 2 nights in a row. I'll take a loss here for Kimura. I'm not too upset with that.
Hey, he didn't take a pin for the loss, so we'll at least give him that much. So he's still on a non-pin streak of 3 matches. Saturday, April 24th, 1954. This one is
you skipped the 23rd. We missed the 23rd.
Oh, I did. I apologize. Taito Ward Tokyo Kurume Kokukigen.
Yeah, say that 3 times fast.
Now that main event is just Yamaguchi versus Bulldog Butcher. They take it. I have a 4 minutes 12 seconds, but then it's a draw. So how do you have a third fall if it's 4 minutes 12 seconds?
That's kind of a weird deal. Yeah.
Math is hard. It was supposed to go 61 minutes. I see it as a draw, but I also see 3 separate falls that total about 23 minutes. So
right.
We're going to hold up his title because we're just not sure what happened here. Yeah, Yamaguchi and Bulldog Butcher, it looks like it's a draw based on the fall count.
Yeah.
And then we're back to tag matches Saturday, April 24th. Again, this one is in Kurume Kokukigen, and it's Yamaguchi and Kimura. This time getting the win over Bulldog Butcher and Tommy Jennings. Yamaguchi takes the first fall over Butcher. Butcher gets the second fall over Yamaguchi. Kimura comes in with his big save, getting the pin over Jennings for another win. Kimura Mania running wild. He's on a win streak here. It's Goldberg-esque, I tell you.
Well, the matches are going a little longer than Goldberg, but I'm with you.
That's true. Sunday, April 25th. Again, we're back at Kurume Kokukigen. This is a single match. Toshio Yamaguchi, 2 falls to 1 over Tommy Jennings. Yamaguchi in the first fall, 12 minutes, 21 seconds. Jennings wins by DQ. The second fall, Yamaguchi with a reverse body attack takes out Jennings in 5 minutes and 48 seconds.
When it says reverse body attack, I picture Kochi Naka with the flying ass bump. Here
I love that move. So effective. We just wait. In another 900 episodes, we're going to get to the 90s and the G1 climax matches he had against Chono. He was like, in basketball, you heard of a Celtics killer or a Lakers killer. One player just had another team's number.
Sure.
Koshinaka had Masahiro Chono's number, and the G1 Climax. When I was doing the cable show, we would laugh so much about it. It's just, for whatever reason, the sick joke where Koshinaka would be the guy to take Chono out of the running, out of the points lead. It was just really interesting to watch.
Nice.
So I'm glad you brought up Shiro Koshinaka, one of my favorite wrestlers, a ton of charisma. Talk about a guy who got it. But he would not even be born at this point. So we've got a lot more to talk about.
Right.
Where did we go here? We did
April
the 25th, 29th, Himeji City Ground in the Hyogo Prefecture. Toshio Yamaguchi against Frank Glenn again. This time, 2 straight falls. Yamaguchi with a reverse crab hold, 10 minutes, 43 seconds. And then the second fall, just by pinfall, 6 minutes, 46 seconds. So quick work of Glenn this time. May 2nd in Kyoto City, tag match Yamaguchi and Kimura against Bulldog Butcher and Frank Glenn. And Yamaguchi gets the first fall pinning Glenn. Butcher gets the second fall. Lost will to fight. I'm going to call that a submission.
Yeah, sounds like it.
He submits Yamaguchi, and Kimura to save the day, who gets the pinfall over Butcher. So again, of the tag team of Toshio Yamaguchi and Masahiko Kimura, Yamaguchi's seems to be more than amenable to give the hot tag to Masahiko Kimura so he can come in like a house of fire and finish off the match.
It seems that way. Because that's not the first time we've seen this layout. Yamaguchi will get his first fall win. Then Yamaguchi does the job in the second fall, and then Kimura comes in to clean up house at the end of the show. So it seems like the format that they've used more than once here on this tour.
Yeah, well, let's check out the last show of Toshio Yamaguchi's All Japan Pro Wrestling Association Tour, Tuesday, May 4th. Yeah, I agree, it's interesting. It's in Nishinomiya City, the Hankyu Nishinomiya Stadium. A tag match.
Whatever you just said.
Exactly. Yamaguchi and Kimura over Bulldog Butcher and Frank Glenn. 2 straight falls. Yamaguchi takes the first in 24 minutes, 14 seconds, pinning Glenn. Kimura, 11 minutes, 54 seconds, ring out Butcher. So he gets him on a ring out. So it's not exactly a pin, but Kimura's got plenty of pins. It's a win, and it's 2 straight falls. So on the last show of the tour, the good guys win, and they win strong with a 2 straight
decisively
fall.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so that's
fun.
So that's Yamaguchi's tour, and he does it with the help of Masahiko Kimura.
Before we move on to anything else, I did want to touch a little more on this All Japan promotion, because and I think you know where I'm going with this. It's kind of an interesting promotion for its time.
Yes, it is. I agree with you there. It is. It does show some things that I hadn't seen from Japan rings before,
right?
But are now known to be just traditional booking maneuvers and ways to promote the wrestling product that go back all the way to the 1930s, I believe you're telling me.
Yeah, we'll talk about that interesting match here in a second. But I was, it was also the first promotion, and probably for quite a long time, they did intergender stuff. And I don't mean man versus woman, but they actually had ladies matches. They had midget matches on some of their tours here. They don't do a lot of American guys on this tour, and we don't have a lot of results. And you have to figure the shows that Kimura didn't work tag matches, he was likely on the undercard somewhere. But it's just kind of interesting how this was more Americanized in regards to how they were going to book. It was like, well, let's do some ladies. Let's do the midgets. Let's have matches in the water, Dan.
Matches in the water. Pool matches, 1954 in Japan.
Right.
They did not wait very long to start throwing out the wacky, crazy promotional methods that Japanese wrestling promoters in the United States were using. They were throwing anything against the wall just to see what would stick. And regarding only having the main events for this tour, I'm just happy to have anything. You've got to be super
that many nights in a row?
Deep dives. To say, where are you going to come up with this information? It was a long time before I even knew this promotion existed.
Right.
As far as my old wrestling research was going. And it was only through the help of some websites and some people that I've traded footage with over the years that I became aware of this other promotion. And then through research for this show, it's just really kind of solidified it and put it together in a way that makes a coherent narrative for the development of pro wrestling.
But yeah, you go back to the America, world of professional wrestling, catch as catch can. It really got the big boom there at the beginning of the century in the 1900s, and then it slowly tapered off. There was speculation that it may be a work, and some other things went into that. And then by the 20s, there was sort of a downfall to a degree, and that's when that boom period of the 20s and 30s, when they started throwing everything against the wall, people dressing up in silly costumes, wrestling as a devil, wrestling as a vampire. Guys, all the way back then, over 100 years ago. And like you were saying, obviously they had matches in the pool. There's actually pictures from the 1930s of wrestling matches taking place in the water. There's pictures of them wrestling on a pile of dead fish. I can't imagine what they smelled like after that. Ice matches, wrestling in the snow. There was all sorts of random crazy gimmick matches in the States going back 100 years ago. And so that was just they were trying things out. This is before TV, guys. So, and here in Japan in the 1950s, I guess Yamaguchi, he got wind of some of that and he gives it a try here. He's not afraid to give things a try. How apropos too, Dan, that P.Y. Chang, Tojo Yamamoto, who would become famous in the Memphis territory, would be part of a promotion with gimmick matches.
Yeah, stunning. And maybe it set his brain into that path of just having crazy gimmick matches as a promotional tactic, and it solidified that outlook for him as early as 1954.
And you touched on it here during this tour in regards to Kimura teaming with Yamaguchi. Now he gets some wins here thanks to Yamaguchi, not so much Rikidozan in the tour prior in the JWA. But you said yourself, he seems to realize, perhaps coming out of this, that, okay, Rikidozan ran a tour, Yamaguchi ran a tour, but if I want to be really successful, at least in the ring, maybe not so much business-wise, if I want to be really successful in the ring, maybe I need to run my own promotion once again.
Yeah, if you start your own promotion, you get to put yourself over because you're the head guy, and then you can give the fans a chance to determine if they'll follow you as the head guy. We've seen it before where you put someone as champion, maybe the Goulas boy.
George Goulas.
George, Daddy says sell. You can push anybody to the top, but if the fans don't buy it, then it's going to be all for nothing. But Kimura, at this point, he's got more credentials than anybody. He's got more credentials than Yamaguchi. So he's like, what am I doing here? I'm trying to look into the mind of Masahiko Kimura and think what he's trying to figure out here and how he can get his own promotion started, because he shouldn't be getting the pins. He should be a number one guy. I don't even think he needs to be a number two guy, because that didn't get him much in the first tour with Rikidozan. It got him a bunch of losses and a bunch of pins on TV. So he knows that his position in the JWA is not something that's helpful to him. But without him forming his own promotion, then what can you really do?
Yeah, and I've read here in a lot of the literature in regards to this whole thing. I'm not sure where this comes from. I'm not sure if this is a Rikidozan quote or what the deal was, but I have here it written down that Kimura was unable to adapt to the unique style of professional wrestling, such as receiving techniques, I guess wrestling holds, from his opponent. I have to argue that all day. This guy's doing jobs left and right. I think he knows how to sell for these guys.
Weasel words apparently existed 70 years ago, because when I hear that phrase of unable to adapt to the style, I also think I am scared to death that the fans are going to like him better than me. So I have to keep squashing him on television to convince people that I'm the guy they need to pay attention to. Because if I showcased him and he becomes more popular than me, now he beats me outside of the ring for notoriety, and we all know he can kick my butt inside the ring. At that point, why does he need me? And does Rikidozan sponsor then say, hey, Rikidozan, I don't think this is working. I'm going to start sponsoring Kimura. Yeah, is that a possibility? I mean, I'm just spitballing here on the politics of why things were done and why Rikidozan, I think, humiliated him on television to take all those pins on TV. He had to understand that doesn't make him look good.
No, and had it been a single fall, A, we wouldn't have noticed it, and B, anybody can take a pinfall loss, especially, in a match like that, the main event match. And I wouldn't have questioned it as much, even if Rikidozan, didn't do the job. as long as, Kimura wasn't the one, wasn't playing out the way it was night after night, like we saw there. But I just go back to that one sentence about Kimura unable to receive wrestling techniques or wrestling holds, unable to sell or bump or whatever he's trying to say here. And he's got to be able to bump because he's laying on the mat, taking a 3 count night after night in those main event matches. So, and you have to think, after a couple of nights against guys the level of the Sharpe Brothers, if Kimura really wasn't able to sell or perform properly, they probably would have pulled Rikidozan aside and said, we can't work with this guy anymore. He's not workable, right? So you have to imagine this is just kind of a little bit of BS.
Yeah, this sounds like revisionist history in my book, and that sounds like something the Rikidozan camp might say to explain why what happened regarding him.
So I can't remember. Yamaguchi's had at least 2, if not 3 wrestling quote-unquote promotions at this point. He keeps changing the name of them. But Kimura, he tried to upstart something last year in 53 as well, but here we are in 54, and it looks like here in May, he's going to start up his next promotion.
Yep, he is. It's, I'm trying to find the name of it now. I'm scrolling all over the place. I apologize.
You're fine. It's the International Pro Wrestling Force.
No, he doesn't have a tour with that, though, does he? No, he just announces the formation of it.
Yeah.
That is May 10th. May 10th. That was 70 years and 1 day ago, I'll have you know. That is
from when we're recording.
That's true, from the recording. And for those lucky people that are Patreon supporters, you'll get it within a couple days of this. So we don't know whatever happens. At least he announces his intention to start a promotion.
Right.
Does he have a dojo? No. But then again, Rikidozan started a promotion on July 1st and didn't have a dojo, didn't have anything. It took him a month before he could even have an exhibition match. So maybe Kimura's thinking, this is where I start. Saying I'm going to do my own thing.
This is very interesting because we have the full results of the Rikidozan, the JWA shows, so we know who he has on his tour. We know there's some gaijin in there, but there's also guys from his dojo working the undercard. Who did Yamamoto have on the undercard? Clearly Kimura was working somebody. We really don't know the full layout or structure or who he used. Did he use anybody from the JWA? I don't know. And then here we go to Kimura, who announces he's going to be running shows, but we have no results. There's really no shows, I don't think, for months still. For Kimura here. No,
it's just made an announcement. It's like a press conference, and then it's out in the ether. And I have no idea who he's wrestling for. This is in May. The next major thing that happens is that JWA has its second big tour of the year in 1954, but that won't start until August. So he makes this press conference announcement, and 3 months later, we still don't know anything.
Right. And speaking of that second tour, you're talking about a 42 show tour, if I do remember correctly here, for the JWA. I don't know if you want to jump into there, how you want to tackle that. There's just so much to look at. I don't think we can break it all down, but it's kind of. I
don't intend on breaking it down. What I can tell you is that the foreigners or the gaijin for this tour are Hans Schnabel and Lou Newman that are billed as the Pacific Coast Tag Team Champions.
Mm-hmm. No Sharpe Brothers this time.
No Sharpe Brothers. Everyone else appears to be military members. One is Dr. Bob Olson, known as Strangler Olson. Bobby Mumphrey.
We saw Strangler Olson on the Yamaguchi shows, I believe.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. He did. And Bobby Mumphrey and Jimmy Glarg, who we had also seen.
I hope Jimmy Glarg works here for a while because I love when you say his name.
So I'm looking at this 42 cards. Oh, and of course, every tour is really a fundraiser for something. This tour, actual proper title is Pro Wrestling Big Competitions for the Pacific Coast Championships, fundraiser for disabled children.
Okay. Well, we can't prove that, so it is what it is.
That's really all you have for Gaijin. I think that we can give this a look over. We can at least talk about, I can tell you what aired on the TV shows.
Sure, that's fine.
But we'll start at the beginning. Where else would you start? August 6th, 1954, Tokyo Metropolitan Gym, 15,000 people. They went to a bigger venue, and I don't see it as being sold out, but it's got 15,000 people there. And it was on TV. And the semi-main is Kokichi Endo beating Bob Mumphrey in 2 straight falls.
Right.
And in a non-title match for the Pacific Coast Tag Team Championship, Schnabel and Lou Newman take the only fall against Rikidozan and Surugaumi. We saw him and talked about him on the last tour. And in fact, I believe Surugaumi, watch this, he was the only guy with a winning record on the undercard. So look at him. He's getting pushed, and he's in the tag team main event coming off of that first tour.
Yeah.
So maybe there is some booking methodology that was employed, because now he's in the main event. Schnabel pins him in 43 minutes, and the final fall is a double countout. So the only fall recorded was Schnabel and Lou Newman. Let's see what actually aired on TV. August 6th. This one was 7:26 to 9 p.m. on Nippon TV.
It's about an hour and a half.
Yep. But if you watch it on NHK TV, they edited out the first 4 minutes, so it's only 7:30 to 9 p.m. It had the Endo-Mumphrey match and the tag match main event as the matches that were featured.
Okay.
For that particular show. That's August 6th. So now we'll shoot over to the next show, August 7th. Again, Tokyo Metropolitan Gym. There's a discrepancy in the attendance. It's either 15,000 or 10,000.
It's like Vince and Meltzer arguing, right?
Yeah, I'd like to know the difference if I worked that show.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
But they split up the tag team. So Lou Newman defeats Kokichi Endo 2 falls to 1 in about, I want to say, just under 20 minutes. And Rikidozan defeats Schnabel 2 straight falls in under 20 minutes. And this match was televised, but based on the time limits of those 2 matches, they probably had time to give the finish of the prior match, which is Surugaumi and Harold Toki going to a 45-minute draw against Bobby Mumphrey and Yusef Turco. So let's go to the third show of the tour. It's August 8th. Again, Metropolitan Gym. This one's 15,000. And we have Surugaumi defeating Bob Mumphrey 2 falls to 1. And for the Pacific Coast Tag Team title, Schnabel and Lou Newman defeat the team of Rikidozan and Kokichi Endo 2 falls to 1.
Actually, if it's all right with you, Dan, I have this wrote down in long form. I was going to try to break it down with you here fall by fall.
Feel free.
Okay, so we got Schnabel and Newman taking on Rikidozan, Kokichi Endo in the main event here. And first fall, it says this day's match was broadcast live on Nippon TV at 7:05 p.m. to 9 p.m. So that's about a 2-hour window there. And on NHK TV from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. So not as much action, but they get, another 90 minutes. So it says it was a very competitive match, tag team match from beginning to end. Early in the match, Newman punches Endo, knocks him down. Rikidozan comes in, shoves Newman. At that moment, empty juice bottles are thrown from the audience seats towards the foreign players. And that's obviously the gaijin they're referring to there. It didn't hit the 2 foreigners, but it hit the Nippon sports reporter who was in the press box, breaking his forehead open. And the match was temporarily stopped, and the person who threw the ball, they say ball here, was pulled over by police. I'm assuming that means he was escorted out, but I got a kick out of the way it was translated to pulled over by police. So the guy removed. The match is resumed then, still the first fall. Rikidozan knocks Newman down with a series of karate chops and gets the pinfall with a body slam. That was the first fall in a nutshell. Kind of crazy start.
Yep. ECW. We've got glass bottles being thrown. We've got people in the press getting color.
Yeah.
It's mass hysteria.
So the second fall, not as eventful, but it does feature the foreigners taking down Endo, beating him down, and then, of course, scoring the win over poor Kokichi Endo because his name is not Rikidozan. So the heel's going to score the win in the second fall here, tying everything 1-1.
That's correct. It's just over 7 minutes. Endo takes the pin. No big surprise here, but this match is already kind of crazy. The fans appear to be energetic, we'll call them. The fact that they're already throwing glass bottles
in the first round, in the first fall, right?
Yeah, so they're here to see a show, and they're here to, make life difficult for the evil outsiders.
Right.
A booker with a little more seasoning might read the room a bit and go, I think I know what I need the finish to be for this match, because the natives appear to be getting restless.
Yes.
Let's see what Rikidozan does in the third fall of this match.
Let's do that, shall we? So we go to the third fall, and it says the two foreigners took turns pulling Endo's hair, denying Rikidozan a chance to tag in, and Schnabel pinning Endo down with a series of body slams in less than 2 minutes to grab the victory. So the foreigners, who have probably been through this a few times, they probably know what should have been done, but they didn't want to lose. So they said, let's get the hell out of here as quick as we can. But let's see what the report here says. Now, it says what was unsettling was the crowd who were expecting the Japanese team to win. And by the time the winning cup was handed over to the foreigners, the audience was already on its feet. They're out of their cushions, Dan. And the place erupts with yelling and screaming as the foreigners leave the venue smartly, surrounded by police. Objects are then thrown at them from it was the third floor seating. My God. Several spectators entered the ring, and nearly 1,000 spectators crowded ringside.
That is unbelievable. We've got the very first, what would we call it, a riot?
Riot, sure.
In a Japanese ring for a Japanese wrestling promotion. Wrestling hasn't changed that much over the years, obviously. And it's just unbelievable. There's two things that are unbelievable about this, in my opinion. One, there was a riot in 1954 because the hometown team didn't win.
Right.
And two, August 8th, 1954, we have a blow-by-blow review of a television episode of Japanese professional wrestling.
Right.
It just blows my mind that this kind of information is available, and I'm happy to have it. I'm thankful to have it, and I'm also thankful that we get to present this to the listeners. Where else are you going to get this kind of information? I ask you.
Yeah, and obviously the heels, who had probably been through this a time or two over in the States, you read it like, wisely, they get the hell out of Dodge as fast as they, we did the job. There's a white hot heat coming here. Let's get the hell out of here as fast as we can, wisely to the dressing room with the police. Meanwhile, there's still people ringside as well, including, it's reported several more police officers try to calm down the commotion, but the spectators are shouting and yelling. They want their money back because, their team lost. So that's amazing.
That is funny. And then the manager who asked the people to turn off the lights and keep the place quiet, that didn't even work. What a mess. So this incident, now it's an incident. It was covered in the Stars and Stripes newspaper, which is read on all the military bases in Japan, South Korea, Hawaii, and Guam. For this reason, the incident is well known in today's American professional wrestling historians. Crazy.
Yeah. I can't specifically say for certain, that was the first ever riot in a Japanese professional wrestling ring, but it certainly is the first one we have documented. So we'll just go with that. That's just crazy. We can scroll through a few of these if you'd like, Dan. Just house shows, it looks like to me. Sapporo, a few Sapporo shows here. Rikidozan teaming with Endo, drawing with Schnabel Lou Newman, some more singles matches. Rikidozan going over on Newman. Looks like 6-man tag, and Surugaumi back in the main event with Endo and Ricky, scoring a win over Schnabel, Newman, and Jimmy Glarg gets the main event here because they needed another outsider, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it's crazy. None of these are blowing me away. They really only have the tag team as legitimate gaijin, and the rest are just fill-ins. So what I'm seeing in these cards is that you have 4 undercard matches, or at the very least, 3 or 4 undercard matches with all new guys, including some new guys that I guess are just the second wave of trainees. And when and if we ever get done with this tour, because it is 42 shows, we'll take some time and talk about some of the new introductory players or the new rookies that are wrestling for the JWA. We do have some information on some of them.
Excellent.
Just so you can kind of fill out the card for who's going to be wrestling in some of these matches.
So what I'm going to do, since I'm scrolling along as I am anyway.
Me too.
I'll just kind of read what I'm noticing as I scroll here, not necessarily covering the results. Anybody who wants the results of all of these shows, all 42 shows, are welcome to join the Patreon and check out my insanely detailed show notes for the Grenade, for Regional Wrestling, for Monday Warfare, for the upcoming Retro Wrestling Review Show, and of course Dan's Pro Wrestling Academy. If you guys want to check out all of the results here, feel free to do that. But as I go through here, I noticed not so much like the Sharpe Brothers, we're seeing a few Rikidozan Endo wins over Schnabel and Newman, of course non-title matches, but they are scoring wins and a couple of losses as well. Endo doing, back-to-back jobs, first and second fall or what have you. They break up into singles off and on. If you see anything specifically, Dan, that sticks out to you, feel free to stop me as I scroll through. I'm going through the month of August right now. Lots of Rikidozan and Endo versus Schnabel and Newman in the main event more often than not here. They're trading wins back and forth, it appears. Nothing really catching my eye out of the ordinary. This is more of a mundane tour, but they're drawing. I mean, you look at some of these sold out, 7,000, 10,000. So it's safe to say that first tour really set the stage here for drawing the fans and packing it in this second tour.
I agree with you there. It sounds like the audience has an appetite for wrestling because these cards are not impressing me. And the only thing that is impressing me is how many people are paying to see them. These are crazy. And it looks to me, based on some of these results, that maybe they won the titles. Maybe Rikidozan and Endo might have won the titles. I see some draws coming up. I see some wins here. I see a flat-out win, unless I'm crazy, on the 21st of August.
There's several big wins. Yeah.
And
they
not
won
only
a few
is it
times.
a win, it's 2 straight fall win.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that too.
DQ, though. First fall is a DQ fall, so maybe it's a DQ. It has to end on a pin. I'm trying to figure out because I don't remember there actually being a title change.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to do some digging, but I'm fairly certain this is a make-believe title reign for Schnabel and Newman. I believe, if I remember reading correctly, the Sharpe Brothers may have had these Pacific Coast titles, but they weren't part of this tour. So this is what we get instead. From what I read before we got into this thing, the best I could tell was I don't know that Schnabel and Newman were actually any form of a tag team champion walking into this. So,
are you telling me this could have been a title won in a tournament in Rio de Janeiro again?
It's very possible, and it may go back to Rio after this as well. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. What is interesting to a degree is no Yamaguchi, no Kimura on this tour. So it's Surugaumi who gets the promotion. Anytime there's a 6-man tag, Surugami's stepping in as the third man with Rikidozan and Endo. I also see a few shows here going into September that has Surugami teaming with Rikidozan again, and the main event against Schnabel and Newman, even on TV. I'm seeing a TV show here on September 8th in Osaka. 14,000 fans in the main event. It's Schnabel and Newman going over 2 straight falls on Rikidozan and Surugami, who, of course, takes both of the falls.
Of course he does. I do have a TV episode from August 25th, 15,000 people, Tokyo Metropolitan Gym. It has a sponsor for this one. It has the Mainichi Newspaper Cup. And it's a 6-man match, Rikidozan, Kokichi Endo, and Oki Shikina. Back again on TV against Hans Schnabel, Lou Newman, and Bob Olsen. Who else could you have? Schnabel pins Oki. Rikidozan pins Schnabel. Rikidozan pins Olsen. So Oki Shikina, even though he's long in the tooth, he's taking the pin here, so it's more of a spectacle. Hey, look, we got a TV taping. Let's bring Shikina in just so we can get him on TV.
Somebody needs to recover this title, this Mainichi Newspaper Cup title. We need to see this 6-man back on TV and fast.
And as you were saying, Surugami is in the semi-main, and he defeats Yosef Turco in 2 straight falls. So Surugami is getting the push of all pushes here. After that, I would be agreeing with everything that you said leading up to...
September 8th is where I was at. Yep.
Don't forget that awesome August 31st Nagasaki bicycle racetrack show. How many people you can fit on a bicycle racetrack?
Sold out, though. Sold out.
Sold out. That is true. So let's get to the TV here.
Yeah, we got like 3 days of TV, I believe. Yeah.
Yep. 3 days in a row, the 8th, 9th, and 10th, all in Osaka Prefectural Gym. Oh, it's TV. I will just scroll down and we'll actually get what aired on the show. Why not? Okay. So we've got September 8th, This is almost a 2-hour time slot on NHK TV, 7:30 to 9:15 p.m. We've got the Watanabe versus Bob Mumphrey match. We've got Endo versus Olsen, and we've got the tag team match, Rikidozan and Surugami. They spelled it weird, against Schnabel and Newman.
Yeah,
and it was almost a 2-hour time slot here.
Yeah, the heels go over 2 straight falls there.
Yep. On the second TV taping on Thursday, September 9th, we're going to have the Yonataro Tanaka versus Bob Mumphrey match. And we're going to have the 6-man main with Rikidozan, Endo, and
Surugami
again versus Schnabel, Lou Newman, and Dr. Olsen. Dr. Olsen, I have
That would be the Strangler Olsen or whoever that was, right? I would imagine.
Strangler Olsen, correct. Mm-hmm. NHK TV gave him a 1 hour and 10-minute time slot for that. So let's see how long that match ran. That was September 9th. Let me scroll down. I'm almost there.
I got an hour draw on that match.
Oh, so maybe they got to see the end of the draw. That'd be neat. I don't think they could have, though, if they were showing the undercard match. So let's go to the 10th, the final taping. And that one has 15,000 people. Surugami defeats Olsen in the semi-main. And in the main event, it's a Rikidozan versus Endo, defeating the team of Lou Newman and Hans Schnabel. 2 straight falls. Second fall, Rikidozan pins Schnabel. The only thing I would have of note also that we'll bring up later on is there's a debut of Junzo Yoshinosato. You will hear more about this guy in the future, but there is a debut of an important wrestler who just shows up in September on the September 10th card, I believe, and that's his real debut. Some claim that he debuted the next day on September 11th. My data indicates he debuted on the 10th. So that wasn't on TV, but that's something just to keep in the back of your head. That Yoshinosato name you are going to hear from again. Moving through September, still drawing 10,000, 8,000, drawing huge shows, huge houses, I guess you'd say. A lot of non-title matches still. There was a card that was postponed due to typhoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, and I use that word very, very loosely, introducing to you right now, one half of the natural disasters, Typhoon!
That's interesting, too. We'll get into that. Go on.
Yeah. It was originally supposed to be September 18th in Tokyo, got postponed to the 21st due to a typhoon. So we will move on that later, but it turns out that 21st date is a TV taping. And the semi-main is the Surugami. He's a ball of fire, that Surugami, defeating Dr. Olsen 2 falls to 1. And the main event, Rikidozan and Endo, defeating Lou Newman and Hans Schnabel 2 falls to 1. Now here, unless I'm not seeing it right, Schnabel pins Endo, Endo pins Newman, and Rikidozan pins Newman. I'm counting 3 pins here. It was for the Pacific Coast Tag Team title, so I think we might be seeing the very first title victory for Rikidozan in Japan.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think they already. I'm not positive. I mean, this was televised, correct?
It was televised.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was going to say I'm not sure if they already won it earlier in this run here, because I know they had scored falls before, but I think there were DQs involved in the other ones, and this is like the first. Yes. Okay.
But the results made it seem like even the following shows after that made it seem like the results would indicate that they had actually won the title.
Right.
So it's hard to tell. It's weird. Everything's weird. But I'm trying to find the results of the September 21st show. They don't mention anything about the title change, but it sure looks like 3 falls to me.
Yeah.
So I'm calling that a title change. And that was on the 21st. So we moved to the 22nd. That one's fine. The 23rd. I feel like I'm missing a TV taping somewhere in here. I think the 23rd might have been the TV taping.
So we see the 26th again. Also, when we get there, it's postponed until the next day due to a typhoon. Once again, lots of typhoons going on. And,
yeah, I do have it's a radio broadcast. That's why I'm confused. September 21st, we talked about that. That actually aired on Nippon Television and NHK Television, the two big networks at the time. aired that Pacific Coast Tag Team title change. On the 23rd, it was a holiday Thursday. I don't know what holiday September 23rd is in Japan, but they did air the Junjo Yoshinosato versus Watanabe match, which seems out of the ordinary for a guy that just debuted 2 weeks before. I told you you're going to hear more about him. And then there was a 6-man tag main event with Rikidozan, Endo, and Surugaumi against Schnabel, Lou Newman, and Yusuf Turk. Mm-hmm. And that was a radio broadcast from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. But Yoshinosato is already on or being broadcast, whether it's TV or radio. He's already being featured. I'll call it like that.
That sounds fair. And yeah, I knew the name based on, past history of studying some of this stuff. So it was kind of interesting to see how he really did come into play here in Japan back in 54. But yeah, the name will come up time and time again. So it's good to touch on him here.
Yeah, it comes up only a few days later. This is September 27th. I had it highlighted, even though it doesn't say TV. Another radio broadcast. This one only from 3:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. So I don't know if this was the main event started at 4:10. So we're not getting the main event on this show, but we're getting 2 matches, and it's Yoshinosato versus Yusuf Turk and Surugaumi versus Miyajima. So it's 2 undercard matches, or if the main event started at 4:10, this was the semi-main and the third from main event match that were broadcast as a radio broadcast for September 27th. After that, we go back to traditional TV as I scroll up. And here is the final match of the tour. If I can get to it, it's October 1st. It's technically its own show. It's not part of the tour, even though it happened 2 days later. It is called the Tokyo Governor Cup Tournament. It was a one-day tournament, a charity event that invited thousands of children. And even with thousands, they had 12,000 people there at the Metropolitan Gym. And there were 8 matches to qualify for round 1. We don't know the results of any of them. The semifinals had Yoshinosato against Miyajima and Yusuf Turk against Harold Toki. And in the qualifying tournament final, Yoshinosato beats Yusuf Turk. So Yoshinosato is getting featured very heavily. He's been wrestling for just over a month. And he's ending up on TV and radio.
Surugami's probably getting pissed off now. He's going to look at his spot.
He could be if he wasn't in the main event. I'm sorry, wasn't in the semi-main. He's teaming with Kokichi Endo, beating Bobby Mumphrey and Jimmy Glarg in 2 straight falls.
They're still hanging around.
Yep. And in the Tokyo Governor Cup elimination match, you have Rikidozan fighting Yoshinosato. He's been wrestling a month and a half. Wow, that's very strange. So let me try to explain what I'm reading.
Okay.
It's an elimination match. Rikidozan's going to fight 3 guys.
Yeah, right.
He pins Yoshinosato in 1:24. Then he defeats Surugami in 2 minutes 20 seconds with a Boston Crab, and then would pin Kokichi Endo in 5 minutes. So Rikidozan is just fighting all comers on this show.
Yeah, but it's like a turmoil match of sorts, the old WWE gimmick. One guy after the next comes out, and Rikidozan's just putting them all away.
Yep, and Surugami and Endo, even though they take pins to Rikidozan, they already had a match. Yeah. They wrestled right before this. So Surugami and Endo taking a pin here, it's not a humiliating thing because they just wrestled a match. And in fact, Yoshinosato had to wrestle an entire tournament to get to Rikidozan. So in a way, even though they all lose to Rikidozan, you put every single one of these guys over because Yoshinosato won an entire tournament and Surugami and Endo beat the other 2 gaijin 2 straight falls. So everyone's getting put over and Rikidozan's getting put over at the same time. The results of this are helpful to all 3 guys, in my opinion, anyway.
Oh no, I can see where you're coming from with the results and everything they're doing there. And before we put a bow on this episode, Dan, I just want to go back real quick to the September 29th show, basically the end of the tour, for lack of a better term, in Kofu, in front of 10,000 fans. I was looking at the main event here, and I love the name of the match. It's the Governor of Yamanashi Prefecture and the Mayor of Kofu Cup match. It's a Rikidozan and Endo going over on Schnabel and Newman to close the tour, 2 straight falls. So they another definitive win to end out that tour. So I thought that was interesting. As I think this is probably a good place to close up shop for this week. And then when we return next week, we got a few things here to end out 1954, and I'm most certainly sure we'll get to 1955 as well.
Yeah, I think it's a guarantee we'll be able to cover 1955. Not much less to talk about for 1954. Not
some good stuff that's left
to talk about,
right.
But of the things that we need to talk about, it's going to take a while to get the whole story about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's gonna be some
we don't want to jam this on the end of an already rather long episode. Mm-hmm. This event, one of these events, is definitely worth a long form discussion.
I agree,
and we don't want to rob the listeners of the in-depth analysis that we're going to provide them the very next episode.
Yes. I think this is perfect that we weren't able to get to this here, because now we can give everybody 1 week's time to head over to YouTube and look up the matchup between Masahiko Kimura and Rikidozan that takes place December 22nd, 1954. Watch it for yourself, but most specifically watch the end of the match, the last couple minutes of the match, and see Rikidozan go into business for himself there, guys. You make up your own mind as to when things went awry, if it started off that way or what have you, but just notice the end of the match, and you guys can decide. Obviously, I think everybody's going to come to the same conclusion that, yeah, that was probably a shoot. Curious everybody get their own take on that. And we'll, like you said, we'll dissect that in long form next episode, but also there's more from the Yamaguchi camp. He's got more matches or more shows here in the fall of 1954 we can discuss briefly. And Kimura finally going to put a show together as well, I do believe. I don't think we have a lot of information, but we'll touch on that. And then, of course, as you said, we'll get to that big one, Kimura and Rikidozan. Yeah,
this is a time, if you've been considering joining the Patreon, now's the time to do it. We talked about the show notes that Ray provides for these podcasts. I have mountains of information that I'm continuing to feed him. I dare say that you're going to have access to stuff you've never seen before. And if you're interested at all in Japanese professional wrestling, you can be the beneficiary of some of the research that I've done over the years and other people have done over the years. You can be buried in info, more info than you ever thought was available. We've got it, and we'll make it available to you, but you got to join that Patreon.
Yeah, so I've done my own digging, but Dan has done worlds more digging than I. So I take my information and all of Dan's information, and I kind of whittle it down into what I think the listeners, or, just the average person wanting to learn from this, the way they would, prefer it to be laid out. And that's basically what I put into my show notes that are available up there. It's not everything, but it's a lot of stuff. And like Dan said, there's stuff that he has found through time that I would never find. I don't know where he got it from. And quite frankly, I'm afraid to ask him. So, but yeah, man, it's definitely a lot of great stuff there. And I'm happy that match is out there for you guys to go and check out on YouTube, and a lot of people have it up there. But I hope, in a future video cast, after we cover enough matches that are available and we discuss some here that are already out there, a few matches that will really interest us, we can go and do our very first video cast. I'll throw a few matches together on there. And this Kimura Rikidozan match has to be one of them. We'll kind of talk about it as we watch it, and then we'll, a few other matches from the time frame as well. But looking forward to that as when the time grows near. But right now, guys, it's time to say goodbye, Dan. But man, what a fun show to get through here. We got through most of 54, and we're coming close to the end of the year, but the best is yet to come.
It is. It's amazing that this show went by so fast, and it was only 9 months of coverage, or 8 months of coverage. We went from February all the way to October, but that's it. There's more to cover in 1954, but it felt like it was a blink of an eye to me. Very fun show to talk about. So much going on in the world of Japanese professional wrestling. And wait to the heavy hitters for the next episode. The match clip that you'll have access to if you get ahead of this and watch the match with Masahiko Kimura against Rikidozan, the analysis we're going to give you is going to be way longer than the clip is.
Oh, for sure. I think it's a good little chunk of the match, though, out there. I think it's something like 10 minutes, maybe a little more than that. So go check it out, guys. There's enough meat there for you to sink your teeth into. But me and Dan are going to really sink into it on the next episode. Tons to say. I've already got a ton of notes sitting here in front of me about it, Dan. So looking forward to that. And I appreciate you taking the time out tonight and getting another episode in the books. It's been fun.
No problem. Glad to do it. And for everyone listening, Class is dismissed.